Lake Stevens. And with that, I'll call the meeting to order and ask everyone to stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Excellent. Thank you, everybody. Just a reminder to please silence any cell phones that we have in the audience. Or up here. Sometimes we have our own cell phones. With that, let's do a roll call. Deputy Clerk Weaver.
Thank you, Mayor. Councilmember Daughtry.
Present.
Councilmember Peter Shagan.
Present.
Councilmember Frederick. Councilmember Dickinson.
Present.
Councilmember Jorstad.
Present.
Council President Ewing.
Present.
Councilmember Tadgen.
Present.
Excellent. Can I get a motion to excuse Councilmember Frederick? I believe he's away on family business.
So moved.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Thank you very much. So with that, Council President, I ask for approval of the agenda. I would ask for one item to be added, and that is an executive session right in the beginning before guest business for about 15 minutes with no action to follow.
Okay, so we'll have that executive session. Are there any other additions or deletions from the agenda?
I would like to move that we remove action item 11, action item A, short-term rental moratorium ordinance 1141.
Okay. Do you have a motion to remove action item A from the agenda? Is there a second?
Sorry. I'll second the motion.
Okay. All right. Point of order, I guess. Do we have a question we can ask on that? Yeah, we can discuss it. Absolutely.
So are you asking for that item to be the ordinance discussion to be struck, or all discussion on that item?
I'm asking for the item to be removed from the agenda.
So no discussion, no action, no nothing.
Correct.
Give a motion and a second. Any discussion on the issue before we, Councilmember George?
Yeah, thanks. I read through the moratorium and the proposal, and given where we're at with our work in the subcommittee, I just don't feel like it's necessary. I think we're moving pretty quickly, and we're going to have something before council fairly shortly, and it just feels unnecessary at this time. Additionally, I am really concerned about the burden that it places on current families planning to visit in 6 weeks that may have their reservations terminated because of the suddenness of this moratorium. Owners that may not be able to, meet the requirements in such short order requirements of an ordinance, frankly, that we haven't been enforcing. So those are that's sort of where I'm at. Thank you.
Yep. Any other discussion? Kayla, if we could have a roll call vote on this, please.
Sure. So can we restate the
motion is to remove action item 11A from the agenda.
Okay. Councilmember Daughtry?
No.
Okay. Councilmember Peter Shagan?
No.
Councilmember Dickinson?
Yes.
Councilmember Jorstad?
Yes.
Council President Ewing?
Yes.
Councilmember Tadgen?
Yes.
Okay, so 4-2.
Do we need a motion to add the executive session?
So, okay, so what you voted on is just that one section to take it off. There is not a motion on the floor to accept the entire agenda with the executive session.
I move that we approve the agenda with the deletion of action item 11 and the addition of the executive session.
Second. Any discussion? All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? So Mayor, you have an agenda.
Okay, thank you very much, President. So with that, so if the guests were not understanding what happened there, so we did add an executive session that we're going to go into right now, and we do that in this room. So we ask that all visitors exit this room. You can hang out in the foyer out there. It will be about 15 minutes, and then we'll call you back in for the rest of this meeting.
Okay, so we're going to go into executive session.
We're back to executive session.
Device connected still.
I think it's the
Someone's.
permit.
Oh, Teams.
Yep.
Yep.
Teams.
Nope, it's off.
You good? Okay, and we switch back to normal operation. Okay, great. I appreciate the audience taking a pause for us while we took care of that business, and we'll see you back. If you do want citizens' comments, we are having citizens' comments. Make sure we've filled out one of these green slips for me. And with that, we'll move forward with guest business. And Chief, you are up.
Mayor, Council, I want to introduce our newest team members of Lake Stevens Police Department. I want to first introduce Matthew Walters. He's our newest entry level officer. Matthew previously worked at Boeing and comes from a military and law enforcement family, which allowed him to live in a variety of places around the world. Matthew was born on an American Army base in Belgium, then moved later to Fort Bragg, North Carolina, Texas, and Virginia. Matthew graduated from Heritage High School in Leesburg, Virginia, with hopes of pursuing a career in law enforcement. Matthew moved to Washington in 2013 to be closer to his family. Matthew enjoys helping in the community, fitness training, obviously, and spending time with his family. Matt has a 5-year-old daughter, Rosalie Walters, who's in the crowd with us. Wave. There she is. And his girlfriend, Nicole Reese.
Yes,
Woo! There you go. We're excited to have Matthew to join our LSPD team, and hopefully he'll be attending the academy soon, which is October 25th, with the hope it will be moved up to August. So, Matthew, this is the council.
Welcome.
Great to meet you.
Serena, appreciate it.
Second, I want to introduce our newest record specialist, Megan Vickley, right? All right, who was hired on June 7th. Megan was born and raised in Washington State. She graduated with a bachelor's degree from Central Washington University. Megan's husband works for the Washington State Department of Corrections as a correction officer in Monroe facility, and they have 2 chocolate labs, Toby and Roxy. Megan and her husband are expecting their first child, a daughter, very soon. In her free time, Megan likes to hang out with the family, go trail jogging, play volleyball, and participate in good board games. You'll see her out here in the park soon. Megan comes to the Lake Stevens Police Department with a decade of experience with working with records maintenance and data organization with the Spokane County recently, and we're excited to have her on the team as our newest records member. Megan, Mayor and Council. Thank you, Mayor and Council.
Excellent. Good to see the family grow. All right. With that, we are going to move into citizens' comments. And how we do citizens' comments at a city council meeting is we provide an opportunity for citizens to provide comments to the council for 3 minutes. We ask that you provide your name and address, and then 3 minutes. I'll run a timer. When you hear the beeper, you have 15 seconds to wrap up before your 3 minutes is up. And we do take comments from anyone who's online as well as who's in person here. So we will first ask for anybody online to raise your digital hand and let us know if you wish to provide comments tonight.
So anyone in the Zoom audience, if you wanted to raise a digital hand, I can bring you in to speak.
Second call, anybody?
Okay, I've got Melissa Knack.
Okay.
Just going to bring her in here. Melissa, can you hear us? Can you unmute?
Okay, sorry. I was clicking the wrong button.
All All right, Melissa, you have the floor.
Thank you. Melissa Knack, 12110 26th Street Northeast. Thank you for letting me speak for a minute here. The recent tragedies on our beaches has been pretty heartfelt considering I have teenagers and a baby. I just want the council to be informed, if you're not already, that there is a volunteer group in our community working on trying to get people to be at those beaches to help monitor them during the week. And should anyone reach out to you guys for help, please consider doing anything you can to help out with this effort. It's really important to keep our kids safe. Thank you.
Thank you, Melissa. Anybody else online?
Anyone else in the audience that would like to speak? I don't see anyone.
Okay, so with that, we'll move to in-person folks. I've got Cliff Call. You want a separate podium, Cliff?
So I'm Cliff Call, 625 Stitch Road. I just wanted to all know that I attended this meeting prior one because of the RVO comments, and it's a little disappointed we didn't get to hear her. I like the idea that you had a memorial going on, but what I really would like to say is I think the residents of Lake Stevens need to be considered as to potential problems with VRBOs. And I say this as being a VRBO renter. I have no troubles with them, but at Palm Springs, they have very specific laws on noises to the point where there can be no noise, no audible music 24/7 outdoors, or it's a $500 fine and immediate eviction. I personally think that something like that should be included, because that is the most annoying thing that can happen without a VRBOs. We also spent a couple months in Hawaii where they are really going through problems on this. So I would just like to say that I love the idea of having the owner occupied while they're there, because that gives the neighbor that has to listen to the problem, if there is one, somebody to talk to short of calling the police. And I should call them and say, hey, you got some renters over there, let's quiet up. So that's basically what I want to say, that those thoughts should be considered. I like the idea of you folks really looking over what other cities have done, because once this is turned loose, it's really tough to take things back down. So let's get it right first.
Next, I have Bruce Odegaard.
So Bruce Odegaard, Vickley Odegaard, 11130 Vernon Road, 4th generation Lake Stevens residents. And I understand the history of Lake Stevens and the development as a kind of vacation destination, but that was a lot smaller population. We're up against a lot of issues, just like the recent color and the drownings in the lake that just breaks my heart. We're adding just more population, a police force having issues to deal with that population, and then we're adding on an infrastructure that's going to be pretty tough from everything that was presented earlier today. And I would just like to say, repeat everything that was just repeated in what he said, and that we need to continue to keep the current situation being a renter-occupied situation for long-term.
And I was going to get the last sort of minute, just to say that I did a sort of a walk around of all my neighbours in, well, not all of them, but those I could get to in a kind of a long walk around, and it showed them I think you actually got at one stage there was a form that was signed by lots of people. Well, that was just done in a matter of like an afternoon when I just kind of talked to my neighbours. Absolutely, without any question of a doubt, they do not want, you're therefore having some oversight and keeping someone there, because you know, we've all heard, and we all know what it's like on 4th of July anyway. I mean, that, if you're then adding to that kind of whole summer season of like kids going crazy, renting these places and just having parties all the time, that's what happens. I mean, yeah, I know there's some that are going to be just, you know, people joining their families and needing a place. They're probably not the ones we're worrying about. We're worrying about the ones that are coming, renting a place and renting it to party. And it's very, very, it's very hard to be close to that. And also I think it's dangerous because they must be, how well they know their voting kind of rules and, you know, how safe they are in the water. Iffy. We just don't know that. If you've got an owner on the scene, at least there's someone that's keeping tabs on it and keeping noise on it. Sorry.
Yeah, just one last, I guess, interest is, has there been full disclosure from the city council on anybody who's invested in properties attempting to do that short-term residential?
Okay.
Thank you very much.
Next I have Eileen Spradley.
Hi, my name is Eileen Spradlin. I live at 104-290 State Road. And we experienced living next door to a non-owner occupied, unhosted short-term rental that was rented as a full-time VRBO through the summer and early fall of 2020. We share a driveway with 5 other homes. One of the owners is the short-term rental, the VRBO. The other 4, out of the other 4, one of them was being treated for terminal cancer at the time, so we didn't engage them. But 3 of us, other neighbors, requested a code enforcement to shut down the VRBO. The first rental was on July 4th. There were probably 20 young people there shooting fireworks off their roof into our yard, into oncoming boats in the lake. There was, I can't prove it, but what appeared to be underage drinking. It was a party. It was, and then through the whole summer, we had 1 and 2 different groups of people coming every week. It was expressly purchased for VRBO. So we are in strong support of the Planning Commission's recommendations. And I was very supportive of Director Wright's moratorium. I think that the fact that we have 1 legal short-term rental out of 25 that we've identified so far in the city speaks loudly to the problem of unregulated short-term rental. So thank you.
Thank you. Rick Trout.
Thank you. Trout, 1706, 123rd Drive Northeast. This is the blue house next to the boat launch. So I run out of the upper level of our garage, short-term Airbnb. And I do live on site. I actually should probably be up here agreeing with all of you because if I was a smart business person, this would benefit. I was talking to some other citizens out in the lobby there, and I am a little on the fence. These stories are horrible. I can't even believe, you know, that some of those things have happened. And it's just, maybe it's because my unit is different. It's smaller. I can't have 12 people. I can only sleep like 4 adults is tight. You know, 2 adults and 2 kids is kind of my main thing. It's usually families that show up. We live next to the boat launch also, so 4th of July for us is insane every year because the boat launch is just, the parking lot is nonstop fireworks at the house. It's like, you know, I think we had guests there last year that ended up calling the police, or they called me first. It's like, what should we do? And I'm like, we're already calling the police, but you guys might want to call them too because the more phone calls, the better. So I totally understand that, but that was a problem with actual problem, kids who live here anyways. Bottom line is, I'm kind of a property rights person, so this is hard for me to run my Airbnb and also be the property rights. That's where I'm kind of on the fence. I like the gentleman that was talking about some of the, I don't mind it's excessive fines. I mean, I think that's actually a great idea. I would be all for that. I mean, any type of noise complaint or just a noise, ordinance. Say, hey, if you're renting a place, your neighbor should not hear anything coming out of your, your unit or from, your yard or anything like that. I would be all for that. So I hope I'm not the only one doing this the right way. I hope I'm doing it the right way, but all of my guests love this town. I just had a family that lives on Catalina Island in Avalon, which is crazy because that's where my wife and I got married. So we had a lot to talk about. They were probably the couple that I visited the most with. Usually guests, you kind of say hi and a little introduction. And we've taken a few people out on a boat if we get to know them, just for a boat ride. But this couple basically stated what everybody, in my experience, who stays at my place, they love this town. They love coming to the Northwest, but most of my renters don't live here. I'm unfamiliar with VRBO. I'm only on Airbnb, which does have a lot of rules. There are certain days like 4th of July. If you live local in the city, if you want to rent an Airbnb, it says no, you cannot rent for 4th of July, Memorial Day, or anything unless you have a history of renting. So I don't know if VRBO has that. So
thank you, Rick. Appreciate it. And Janice Huxford.
Good evening, council, staff, and mayor. My name is Janice Huxford. I live at 625 South Lake Stevens Road. The calls and I exchange mail. I'm the one that delivers mail to you at Christmas time because you have someone that sends it to us. I am, full disclosure, a planning commissioner for the city of Lake Stevens. I have served now 3 terms as a planning commissioner, as a volunteer, because I love the city. I am very passionate about what I do with my volunteer time and hours, and I'm very pleased with what we have presented you in the past. But tonight I'm here as a citizen and a waterfront citizen, because I think this issue affects waterfront more so than any other neighborhood in our area. I'm concerned that we are talking about this as being a issue significant to property rights and not bringing in quality of life rights. So I am a property rights person, y'all know that. But I also am a citizen that pays property taxes, a lot of them, to live in a place that I love. And my quality of life goes down if my next door neighbor, knowingly or unknowingly, decides to go this route. Right now, I don't have someone next to me. It could happen at any given time. I know it's happened to others. And my concern is only that if we don't get in front of this, we are going to be behind it forever. Like some of the other resort towns, let's call ourselves that right now. Resort towns, Coeur d'Alene, Lake Tahoe, Chelan. We went through this with Planning Commission. We did the heavy lifting for you. We did 3 months of public comment. We argued. We have the best Planning Commission. No disrespect to those of you that have served on it in the past, but right now that setup of people are the best you have. And we set forth something that I think is workable, massageable, but certainly able to put in place now, that without a moratorium in place, due respect tonight, that vote would be a solid vote to at least have something on the books that's fair to all the people, whether they want to vacation here or whether we want to live here. So my plea to you tonight is, if we are not going forward with the moratorium, that you go back and approve what Planning Commission has already done the heavy work for you already. Thank you for your time. Respect to you.
Thank you, Janice. Okay, great citizens' comments. Appreciate your willingness to come forward and give comments to the council and give your input on this topic.
Anybody else online?
Is there anybody else online?
There was a hand up and it just went back down. Is there anyone else online that would like to speak?
Okay.
I did want to read into the record, and you have these comments. They were emailed to you and also printed at your station, but we received 3 in writing on short-term rentals from Jeremy Korst, Jennifer Davis, and Kevin Kosh. And those were emailed out, and they're also at your table.
Okay. All right, great, perfect. All right, let's move forward. Let's go to council business, council president.
Councilmember Jorstad.
Thank you. Attended the health board. Gosh, I think it was just last week, but it feels like forever ago. And you may have seen the Board of Health has hired a new health officer, medical director. He is wonderful. He comes from King County. His energy is just really exciting. I think he's going to bring a lot of great new ideas to Snohomish County in regards to public health. He's passionate and he's a really good fit for our county. So I'm super excited about what he's going to bring. And then just want to comment on our short-term rental subcommittee. We've had 2 incredibly productive meetings. I'm really excited about where we're at. And I think we're about to wrap things up. So glad to be a part of that process. Thank you.
Councilmember Dickinson.
Well, you may not believe it, but I really have nothing to report tonight. It's a miracle, but it has been quite the day. Thank you.
Yeah, can you put that?
That's been noted.
Mary was speechless.
So now that it's noted, could you do it again?
Next week.
And put that on the website?
All right, Councilmember Tadgett.
We had a sewer meeting, which I attended part of via phone. Got a good update from Gary. Looks like we're being productive in our negotiations with the sewer district, and look forward to hearing more. Thanks for your work on that, Gary.
Councilmember Peter Shaken.
Yes, as Councilmember Tadgett disclosed, we're continuing to have our discussions with the sewer district. We had a utility meeting last Wednesday. We're making progress. It's methodical, a little slower than I would like to see, but we are making progress. So hopeful that in the next couple of months, we'll have some very fruitful discussions, and we'll bring that back to the council, and hopefully we move this forward. So
thank you.
With that, we are a few days away from either the most festive day in Lake Stevens or the most dreaded day in Lake Stevens, 4th of July. And I am hopeful that the police department takes these same precautions as we did last year, excuse me, with proactive signage in our parks. Notify the public that fireworks are not allowed in our public parks. I live a few doors away from Lundeen Park, and it is absolutely amazing when we don't have police presence there. It is a free-for-all. So I'm hopeful that we will take the same approach as last year and sign our parks and let people know fireworks are not allowed in our public parks. Thank you.
Yeah, I can just comment on that. The mayor's already provided instruction to his staff to continue with that. So they've accepted that invitation. So you should expect to see that.
Great, so great to hear. Thank you.
Councilmember Daughtry.
I don't have anything council-wise to report, but I will talk about 4th of July. We will be having a 4th of July celebration downtown for the first time, put on by the Chamber of Commerce. Water Wars, if everybody's driven by Lundeen and saw that monstrosity out in front of the Visitor Information Center, it's called Water Wars. It'll be right outside these windows right here on the 4th of July. Hopefully the rain will stay away. It's forecast to rain 42% right now, but that thing launches balloons 50 feet past where they're supposed to go if we don't have the net over it. So it's going to be fun. So anyway, 4th of July down here, we're gonna have family games. There's going to be some music at 5 o'clock. By the Lake Stevens Band, and that's about it on that. And
what are the times of that?
The time, it will start about 10 o'clock in the morning and go to about 5 o'clock in the afternoon, or 7 o'clock in the afternoon.
Thank you. I'd just like to echo what Councilmember Jorstad said about the short-term rentals, and also if Councilmember Frederick were here, I had high expectations for them and their participation, and they've exceeded my expectations, which is difficult to do. And so also Director Wright provided some outstanding instruction for us and made himself available outside of normal working hours to assist our committee with that. So thank you, Director Wright, for your assistance there. We're looking forward to having that draft for review very soon. Mayor.
Great, good reports. So we know, I've seen multiple signs being prepared for the no fireworks in the park, to include our big reader boards being reprogrammed. So the word will be out there, and a no tolerance directive to the chief has been given for fireworks in the parks. So we'll see how that goes. I had a great, I've got one thing I want to report on, and then I have a proclamation to read tonight. The one thing I want to report on is last week I had a great opportunity to, a very good opportunity to attend the Association of Washington Cities conference that was in Vancouver. If you don't know what that is, it's essentially the mayors and elected council members from around the state to get together and talk about city issues and city legislative policy. Our goal, if you have not been following the platform that the Snohomish County mayor signed on to as far as public safety, we have some goals. One is to fix what's called the Blake decision. The Blake decision is what is a Washington State Supreme Court decision that essentially has legalized drugs in our cities, and is the reason why we lose a lot of the incentive for getting our addicted kids, neighbors, cousins, uncles, aunts into addiction recovery. It's a very detrimental decision by our Supreme Court that has not been fixed by our legislature. And so Snohomish County mayors have come together. We have a solid platform as that's one of the points that we need to get fixed. So our agenda for going to the AWC conference was to get that on their legislative priority list. It was not on their list when we entered the conference. By the time we exited the conference, it was on their top priority list. There was such a great response from mayors from every single city that AWC leadership had to step up and place it where it needed to be. And what's good to see is we're seeing other organizations jump on that same bandwagon to let the legislature know that we've got to fix the Blake decision. We've got to fix it now. We have just way too much chaos in our city streets and way too many of our kids dying from addiction. So we need to get that fixed. So big win for our citizens last week, and I'm proud to have been part of that with my fellow mayors, especially Cassie Franklin from Everett, John Naring from Marysville, and Russell Wida from Sultan. We all did well. So there's that. That's one thing I wanted to report on. And then, yeah.
So was there any discussion about the initiative that is going to be on the ballot to legalize all drugs in Washington State in any quantity?
Yeah.
And to defund the Department of Corrections by 40% and release inmates to the street?
Yeah, so if you're not aware of it, there's an initiative process going through right now. It's Initiative 1922. It would absolutely legalize every drug in the state of Washington. If you are walking by Walmart and a nice little guy says, you want to help out mental health services, it's not what it is. It's legalizing drugs. And AWC is taking the stance against 1922 as well. Every voter needs to be against that initiative. It will make the ballot just because of the way the ballot system's on there. So you'll probably see it in the fall. You need to vote against that. It is not healthy for our citizens in our community.
So I can just add, the data is there for Oregon. If you want to see what happens, they have limits on their quantities of drugs, and look at what has happened as a result of them legalizing drugs and what's happened in their state. So yeah, thank you, Mayor, for your efforts there.
I realized what happened personally, as I do like to go running, even though I don't look like it. And I had to get a hotel in Portland, but I did not feel safe running anywhere, even just across the border. down in around Portland. So I blame the extra 10 pounds on drugs. So with that, I want to go into the kindness proclamation, and we have a great citizen, Cindy Petosa, who brought this to me a month or so ago and talked to me about it. At first, I was a little bit hesitant because we get hit with a lot of proclamations and a lot of things to talk about, and what's the next thing to do a proclamation about. But as I started thinking about it more and the words of this proclamation, I liked it more and more. And I really found in today's struggle that we've had over the last 3, 4, 5 years with both sides really trying to figure out how we are kind to each other and how we do the work of kindness, I found that the words of this kindness proclamation really fit the bill across all spectrums, if that makes sense. And that's why I'm signing on to it. That's why I like it. I think it incorporates true kindness to all people, and the words of it really express well what I think a lot of sides are trying to say, but not being able to say it, if that makes sense. So with that, let me read it, and we'll see if the city council will jump on board with me in this proclamation. And here we go. Whereas commencing on this day, the city and community of Lake Stevens recognizes each day of the year as an opportunity for our schools, businesses, employees, community groups, and citizens to participate in acts of kindness in our homes, schools, businesses, and communities. And whereas we seek to cultivate thoughtful and compassionate residents by teaching and modeling to our youth to make a difference through random acts of kindness. And whereas the city of Lake Stevens recognizes the value of acts and words of kindness that are performed without prompting or reason, and how these acts can positively impact the person offering kindness, the person receiving kindness, and those witnessing. And whereas acts of kindness can be performed by any person in the city of Lake Stevens, regardless of age, origin, education, gender, religious beliefs, lifestyle, or abilities for the good around them. And whereas Lake Stevens is recognized as a community for bringing kindness, inspiring and empowering our citizens, guiding the young and old to be kind to themselves as well as to be kind to others, and to take a moment to be a thoughtful, compassionate friend, neighbor, and fellow citizen. And whereas all residents and visitors are encouraged to amend kindness and service through intention and action, and thus integrating kindness more regularly into our daily lives. Now, therefore, I, Mayor Brett Gailey, on behalf of the city of Lake Stevens, do hereby proclaim on this 28th day of June, 2022, from this day forward, the city of Lake Stevens as a community of kindness, encouraging all city officials, employees, residents, businesses, and organizations to actively identify ways to increase and celebrate acts of kindness in our community and the positive role that it plays in our communal happiness and health. I think it's a great proclamation. I think it really brings together a lot of the thoughts and ideas that we've been pushing around as a country, and brings into one nice proclamation. So thank you, Cindy. Appreciate it. Any thoughts from the council?
So I have a thought. So I guess please bear with me as so last 90 days for our family has been the most difficult in the 22 years we've been married on many different fronts, and culminating with the loss of my grandmother last night. And I just want to thank those, and I guess echo what the mayor's talked about. I know he's aware of some things and personally reached out, that people have extended kindness to me and to my family in ways that we didn't deserve and didn't expect. And so I just want to appreciate the mayor for recognizing that. And I will tell you that the people that have reached out are very about as diverse of whatever spectrum you want to use. whether it's political or otherwise, that kindness is a universal unifier, and that we can all do something to help our neighbor and our friends, and to help those that are around us. So there are those, I've heard it said, treat everyone as though they were in crisis, and more than half the time you'll be right. And I found that number is far too low. You don't know by looking at someone what struggles that they're experiencing. It's also said, in the quiet heart is hidden sorrow that the eye can't see. And so, yeah, I'll just tell you, I had a neighbor that reached out to me and said, I can't believe you have a neighbor that you do, like what terrible people they are because of what was going on. And my response to them was, they're some of the nicest people that I know. And I'm not going to judge them because of the behavior of their children. And in turn, their kindness has been extended to us as we've struggled. So thank you, Mayor, for that. And thank you for allowing me a personal indulgence.
Thank you. All right. With that, let's move forward to the city department reports. And Chief.
Can we get the council to join you with that?
If you wish, make a motion.
I'll make a motion to join the mayor in approving or incorporating, or I don't know what my verbiage is, to include the mayor's council with the mayor's proclamation.
I'll second.
Third.
Okay, we have a second and a third. Fourth, any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? So Mayor, you have, you could add the council to that as well, please.
Will do. Thank you very much. Appreciate the support. Let's move forward. Jeff, what do you have for us?
Thank you, Mayor and council. Follow that one, but this is the kind of donut or kindness we see often in our profession. We wanted to let council know that the Lake Stevens Police Department is receiving a donated ballistic vest for narcotic canine SIA, valued at around $3,000. We are honored to receive this vest from Vested Interest in Canines Incorporation, which is a 501c3 nonprofit based out of Massachusetts, whose mission is to provide bulletproof and stab protective vests and other assistance to dogs of law enforcement and related agencies throughout the country. Since 2009, Vested Interest in Canines Incorporated has donated more than 4,680 canine ballistic vests, 2,300 canine opioid reversal Narcan kits, more than $243,600 of canine medical insurance premiums through our Healthcare for Canine Heroes program, over $106,200 in canine medical first aid kits, 3 Chevrolet Tahoe patrol vehicles custom fitted for canine units valued at over $50,000 each, 1 advanced canine medical trainer, canine diesel, a full body state-of-the-art skills trainer for canine first responders that simulates active breathing, audio cues, and over 28 different features and medical intervention sites at $62,000. All of their programs are made possible with the funds raised through contribution, grants, and fundraising events. We appreciate this donation from Vested Interest Canines Incorporated, which allows canine SIA to be protected while on duty. I want to thank Officer Dreyer, Canine Handler Officer, publicly to seek this donation and work with the group through this donation process. Thank you.
Thank you, Chief. G, you want to go over the draft to Jennifer Zlaka?
Okay, so this is our new process. We'll just race through this real quick, give everybody a heads up of what's coming up. The draft agenda for July 5th, 2022. We have compensation connections discussion, budget expectations, procurement policy, transportation benefit discussion is tentative at this point, but we hope to have that ready for you guys. Any additions or deletions?
Great. I was hopeful to see the short-term rental on there. Touche.
This is a workshop, right?
Exactly.
Yeah, I was kind of wishing the same thing.
Yeah. Yeah, that's
we can have that done or not.
so the information is Russ, and maybe you can comment on that. He asked for a week or two for him and his staff to do that. So
what we talked about last night was I should have a draft available to the subcommittee for their review next week, and tentatively they would like to have it on your first work meeting as a discussion item. I believe that is August 9th, and then set a public hearing date for August 23rd.
We are not in session after August 9th.
I believe you're out, Caitlin, correct me, July
12th to the 9th.
12th to the
July.
Yeah.
July 12th to August 9th.
I think those are your recess dates. I have that one on my calendar.
Yeah.
So
I can double check that and send it out to everyone just to confirm.
The goal is to have it back in front of you on your first session back from your hiatus, and then followed by a public hearing at the next available action meeting.
So there is no action between now and the end of August, essentially. Is that correct?
That would,
and of which we had a recommendation from the mayor for a 3-week process. That 3-week process is right about now. And now we're not going to have a public hearing until August 28th. I'm disappointed. I don't know what else to say.
I'll say that I'm not disappointed. I'll say that the subcommittee met 2 days after we decided to form it, and we took action and have been very available, meeting twice within 10 days.
And I appreciate that, Steve, but the mayor made a recommendation to form a subcommittee and address that in 3 weeks. Did you not?
I don't remember the timeline. If it was 3 weeks, I know we did the subcommittee, but I don't remember the time, if we put a time on it, Gary, but if that's how I remember it, I don't doubt you.
I think this is a particularly tough topic, and I just don't see rushing into it, Gary. I don't think it's appropriate for you to act like the subcommittee hasn't done everything they can to gather all the information. There's a lot of comments on both sides, and there was an opportunity to bring it forward. Or the mayor brought forward the exact same thing the planning department brought after we all sat here and said, we're not quite right with this. Why don't you go back and rework it? Brought the same thing back. That's when we decided to do the subcommittee. So in my opinion, I think they're doing a great job. I think there's a lot of sides to it. We've heard that. We've gotten several letters from both sides saying, hey, think about property rights. People on the lake saying, hey, think about, the fact that we want to enjoy our lives on the lake. There's a lot to take in there. And I think rushing this, everyone said, let's get it right the first time. So you wanting to rush into it, I think I'm disappointed that you want to rush into it.
I don't have any other comments.
Thank you.
That's thank you, Russ, for that explanation.
Okay, anything else on the agenda? Okay. All right, can I get a motion to approve the consent agenda?
So moved.
Second.
I've got a motion to approve the consent agenda and a second. Is there any discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. And any opposed? Motion passes. Item 11 was struck, so we're moving to 12, discussion item, transportation benefit district.
Go ahead and share my screen.
Okay.
Okay, so council had requested that we look at some debt service options for the transportation benefit district. So I'm going to go over that.
With Director Halverson out, we are not going to go over a lot of the projects. He did put a project list in the staff report that needed a little bit of updating. A couple of the projects were wrong. Director Wright and Administrator Brazel kind of went back through those, and we have gotten that list back together for you. So we will look at the Public Works Trust Fund loans, which I had brought that information to you previously, just as a verbal. So I wanted to get it kind of down on paper for you so you can see what those options are. Bonding debt, looking at 10-year bonds, which is standard TBD timeframe. And then I also have some information on 15-year and 20-year bonds. And then looking at the M&O maintenance and operations, so that's overlay funding. So as I mentioned previously, Public Works Trust Fund loans. So those are used to repair, replace, create domestic water systems, sanitary sewers, stormwater systems, roads, streets, and bridges. So that's how we would likely use them. The construction loans, there's a current maximum rate over 5 years of 1.39%, under 5 years, 0.7%. So they're very low interest loans. The maximum is $10 million and it's up to a 20-year payback, no early or no, there's no issue with paying it back early. And then if you do pay it back early, then you can actually apply to decrease that rate even more. So I do believe we will be looking at doing some of these Public Works Trust Fund loans for some of our projects. A couple of the things we have to look at is the applications are due September 9th and they're ranked and awarded November 4th. So the vote for the TBD will already be done and over by the time we actually know whether or not we'd be awarded. So as I said, Public Works Trust Funds would be kind of secondary to the TBD funding. It's not something we would put into the ballot measure for that unless we put it as a potential. As I mentioned, it is one application for each project. And so we are in competition with ourselves for each project. They're ranking at 70% needs-based and 30% shovel readiness. And then it must receive a minimum of 65 total score to qualify. And then as I had said prior to the cycle, the minimum awarded score was 78.3. And there was 28 applications over the minimum 65 score that did not receive any funding at all. So they are very competitive, and I'll be working with Director Halverson on which projects he's going to be bringing forward on that. And I think we definitely would like to go forward with some projects on the Public Works Trust Fund loan. So looking at,
Barb,
yes.
I have a question. So what is the definition of shovel ready for this?
Jean, would you like to actually, you've been in this business a lot longer than I have when it comes to construction.
Yeah, typically it's a project that we have funding set aside or matching funds, and we have a preliminary plan and are ready to go essentially to bid the project and go through the permitting process.
So where is the design work out on that process then to where it can go out to bid?
Typically it's like a 30% design, isn't it, Russ?
I believe, I was going to say, I believe so. And I think this, with these construction loans, you can get pre-construction along with that. It's just, you'll get a lower score if you're not already through your design process than if you are. So if you have the design already on the shelf, ready to go, you're going to get a higher score in that. I did provide you with a table in the staff report, and Civic Rec decided it had a little glitch with it. So I believe Clerk Schellen was able to send that back out again. This just kind of gives you a breakdown of a number of different options. The first 4 columns are 10-year loans. So these would not have to go beyond the standard 10-year TBD taxing. The last 2 columns is a 15-year and a 20-year. So you can see what our total all-in true interest costs are. So it's between 3.45 and 4%, quite a bit more than our the Public Works Trust Fund loans, but these are more of a sure thing. You don't have to, it's not competitive. Then we go through the bond proceeds. The project funds is what you will actually receive after the costs. So you can see anywhere between 11 million. The more years you have, the more dollars you can look at. Annual debt service. So this is kind of where we were looking at the maximum amounts we will likely get from the 0.2% of sales tax is around 1.5 million the first year, and then it will grow slightly over the next 10 years. So I went through a few different options with our bonds people regarding whether we want to look at a $1.5 million maximum or set aside some for maintenance operations overlays and then do increases annually to coincide with growth of sales tax, as we assume sales tax will grow over the next 10 years. Looking at some of these, obviously when you take out debt, you're going to end up paying more for that debt than the dollars you actually receive. So for example, the 10Y-4, that one actually puts aside $500,000 from each year from the TBD and puts that towards your overlays. So that puts it towards your maintenance, your operations, your crack sealing, your overlaying, and then the remaining fund can go towards a bond. And so the amount of money we would receive for that would be about $9.4 million. The second to the last row shows you we will pay approximately $11.5 million on that debt. So if we want projects done sooner, we're going to pay more for them overall. So if we just take the 10 years stretched out, we do the projects over the 10-year period, we won't have this additional debt. But if you want to get them done in a shorter period, we're actually going to pay additional for it. So this is just some of the options we had. We can increase annually. We can look at, I guess my recommendation if we were to go forward with a bond would be to do it under the 10-year period, just the standard TBD, and not ask voters to go for a longer tax increase. But you can do however you want to do it. I just wanted to give you a number of options. You saw the spreadsheet that Director Halverson brought up last week, I think it was last week. And he had the percentages broken down based on the survey with the sidewalks, the streets, road, trails. In his analysis, he had put aside $250,000 annually additional for the overlays. And that is actually coming out of the street and road proportion. So the row that says street and road is 37%, $555,000 the first year, $579,000 after that. That's putting $250,000 of that money towards overlays and leaving the remaining for roads and streets. And so you're not going to get very many projects from that. The analysis that I added, which we need to work with Director Halverson on these, but pulling aside that $500,000 first for the overlays gets us to about $900,000 per year. And we know that the analysis was that we needed, I believe it was 1.4 million per year for overlays to get us at that 80% mark. So this does not get us there, but it gets us much closer to that. And we can actually maintain our roads better than just increasing the roadways. So this actually shows taking the 500,000 first, and then the remaining $1 million in 2023 is split out by that percentage. And that percentage, again, can change based on how council wants it to go. That's just how it was put in originally based on the survey results. We would definitely recommend putting some funding aside for the overlays and the maintenance first, and then looking at your remaining projects. So this is the listing that it was updated slightly from your staff report. The highlighted ones at the bottom are the ones that would not be able to be funded should we actually put that $500,000 aside first. Now we do have to say, we do use conservative numbers. Our sales tax could increase more than we anticipate. If things go really badly, we could get less sales tax. So putting every one of these projects in a plan In the ballot measure, I would not recommend. I would not recommend saying here are the exact projects we're going to do. If we get some grant funding, it might move out of the Transportation Benefit District project list and go somewhere else. I'm not sure how you want to describe what you're putting in there, but I definitely think having a process and a list available, but being able to move that with the amount of money we're putting towards it is going to be the best route. You may add whatever you like.
Thank you. So just one comment also to point out about funding. And I think one of council's considerations of wanting to see what that looks like, putting the pavement preservation sort of as its own distinct bucket of money. Think of that if we do go out for grants and these types of loans that Barb has described, it's going to be easier to attach those to a street or a road project, something that is defined. Here is this a scope, a beginning and an end, versus pavement preservation that's somewhat nebulous, that you really don't have other grant fund sources to look at. So that's also one of the things we just wanted to point out to you tonight in your consideration on what your final allocation of TBD dollars could look like if you move forward.
What other type of grants are out there for overlays?
For roadways, every year we have PSRC grants, Puget Sound Regional Council. There are federal grants. We get DOT grants. There's direct capital requests we can make through the legislature through their transportation division. And those can go for multimodal, for street, etc. So
those same thing. I'm sorry.
I was just going to, those are typically for new projects, though, Russ. They're not for maintenance type.
That's my point.
Right? Yeah. So
I think the question was
the amount of
asking
grants.
other direction.
Yeah, I was asking the other direction.
What grants are available for overlays? I don't know of any.
None that I would know of.
Yeah, so I'm looking at this the same as we did last week of putting the money in for the overlays from the TBD instead of sidewalks, and do the sidewalks through the other grants and available money that there's out there. I don't want to diminish the idea that we need sidewalks. That's not the point. But the point is we have deteriorating roads and $1.4 million a year to try to get us to 80%. And this isn't doing it the way that it has been given to us right now. I realize we can still massage this. To go out on the ballot and tell the citizens what we're trying to do is what we need to figure out. And so the big deal is if we go for the overlays, we need the people to understand the thing that survey didn't cover, which was how bad the roads are or getting and what the problems are going to be in the future if we don't fix it. So it's really great to go out and do a survey about what they think it ought to be used for, but they didn't have the information that we have on what the overlay or not the maintenance of the roadways were. And so I think that's a little bit, I think they need that kind of information. And I think the survey results would probably have changed if they had that information. Now, I don't know how you would give them that information other than the reports out there. But I'm still vested in trying to get the overlays done ahead of some of these sidewalk projects. Even though I still want the sidewalk project done, there's monies out there for that, not necessarily done by the TBD.
I believe the way that the survey was put out there, that there was a statement made that there would be an assumption that some of the money from the TBD would be set aside for road maintenance. And then it focused on sort of the remaining portion of the TBD. How would you like to allocate that then for distinct types of projects? So it wasn't ignored in the survey. It was just an assumption that part of the TBD would go towards that part of the infrastructure.
So I guess a further question is how much would council like to see put aside? I guess that is one of the questions I was thinking. If we are going to put aside overlay funding, how much do we want that to be?
Well, it's been recommended at $1.4 million a year to get us to 80%.
That's gonna take 900,000 of the transportation benefit district funding every year.
That's what, like 70%. So I guess the question for me is, if we do not appropriately articulate what the need is, this is a good discussion because there won't be any funding unless we get passage, and we're very close to the deadline. So we have the for and against statements that are going to go out. And I don't know where that line is. I mean, I like Councilmember Peter Shagan, his emphasis on, being able to maximize our return on investment. I think he's very spot on with that. But if we can't message that correctly to the community and give them that information, we're not going to have it passed. Even though all the other communities surrounding us have a TBD, I mean, Snohomish, Everett, Marysville, and all the surrounding communities do, we don't. They've done a good job of presenting information. I just read an article today online, City of Everett, about their TBD and what their projects are being used for. And so we just need to get that message out there by citizens.
I appreciate Councilman Daughtry, the point around grant funding being available for sidewalks and not being available for overlay. And I understand that then we may want to prioritize funding for what we can't write grants for. However, I feel like we have made a commitment to our community and to our citizens and received back feedback validating that sidewalks are a priority, and very specific sidewalks in very specific areas of our city. And for us to back away from that, I think is disingenuous, honestly. I think we could do both though. I think we can continue to prioritize sidewalks and prioritize those specific areas that are highlighted there, and look for grant opportunities simultaneously. So if we have these projects proposed and we're still looking for grants and we get a grant for the sidewalks, then that money gets pulled back and prioritized for that overlay work. But I don't think that we should prioritize overlays over sidewalks in any way other than what we've already talked about, pulling that money aside from the top and continuing on with the projects that we've specified.
Okay, so I'm going to be devil's advocate again. I agree that a lot of the citizens have basically told us that they want sidewalks. Like, I get that.
Or need sidewalks.
And I get that. Mm-hmm. I totally understand that. I mean, I just went through last year, we went through getting reelected here, and that's what we heard a lot of. That's all well and good, and it's important. There is no doubt about that. But it is part of our duty as a city to maintain our roads. That's not quite as up in everybody's consciousness until they hit the pothole. And sidewalks are a little bit more, because I can't walk outside my house and get onto a sidewalk. I understand that. But I think that if you start having your roads deteriorate, you're going to get a heck of a lot of people really upset with you really quick, and they're going to be the first ones to fix the roads and forget my sidewalk.
Yeah, I don't think it's an either or.
No, I don't either. But I think the balancing act is we have to tell the citizen what's going on. And okay, sidewalks, I got it. I understand. We've talked about sidewalks for years, and we've been trying to nibble away at that list. I got that part. We don't ever tell the citizens about what the roads are doing. We don't tell them that. We get that report, we cogitate on it, and we make decisions on where money's going to go.
Sure.
But if they're going to be voting on a TBD, we need to be able to tell them that, hey, we've got two really big priorities here, and overlays are just as big of a priority as building more sidewalks. Mm-hmm. Then you take into account on the sidewalk list, especially on some of those, the Soper Hill to Lake Drive, for instance. I realize that says $1.7 million. I'm here to tell you it's going to be a lot more than that. I mean, have you ever walked Soper Hill? That's going to be, I mean, there's telephone poles. What did we measure? 24 inches?
Yeah.
24 inches off the road. We got to move every one of those poles that are 24 inches off the road. We got, and you know, there's no infrastructure in there for stormwater. It's going to be a heck of a lot more than $1.7 million for that sidewalk. And how many people walk Silver Hill? I see one or two, you know, not very many. So, you know, we kind of think about that kind of stuff. Okay, it's a great project, but is it the best project? I don't know where staff came up with how they prioritized those. I don't know that. Maybe we do need to know that. I still think that if we don't, I'm just going to end it and say that the overlays are as important, if not more important, than building some of these sidewalks. And and Councilmember Peter said, he said, why do we have to have curb, gutter, sidewalk? Why can't we do, you know, 5 feet of asphalt, depending on where it is, how it, you know, how the traffic surveys are and stuff like that, to make them less expensive than what's up there on that total cost.
Yep.
So those are the kinds of things we need to do, but we don't got very much time to figure this out.
I don't disagree with anything that you just said. I am in total agreement. I think my point is when we are this is specifically about the TBD and messaging the TBD and what we are committing to do. I don't want us to pull back from our commitment to focus on this list. And I absolutely agree. There might be ways to do it less expensive. There may be different models. And there may be grants that we can seek out. I think all of those things are on the table. I think to switch gears right now and to say, thanks for your information. And here's all this work that's gone into, you know, identifying where the sidewalks are most needed for safety reasons, for multiple reasons. I think we went over that in our last meeting. We're going to do something different. That's what I don't want to have happen.
When we did the survey, did we identify specific sidewalks that would be built? It was just a general question. Would you prefer sidewalks versus other improvements, right? Correct. So, I mean, that's kind of I wouldn't say it's an emotional thing, but it feels better, I think, than laying asphalt down. So I guess I would say, somewhat in defense of Councilmember Daughtry, I think a reprioritization of this schedule is in order, because that's what we got to sell to the voters. I mean, that's the ultimate test, right? They're going to validate whether they agree with this program or not. If it's all sidewalks, I don't know as though that's balanced. We do have a duty to maintain our existing infrastructure. I guess my thought is a little bit after seeing these numbers, maybe we back off the bonding amount. The idea of floating a bond is to get a hit right away and not defer these things to 28, 29, 30, 31. So maybe we back that bond off a little bit, and for the purpose of lowering the debt payment, obviously, but maybe not as a big a bang as far as the maintenance obligation. So those are, you know, it's all a balancing act. It's too bad Public Works Director Halverson isn't here. But,
so Gary, do we need to do a bond? My thought process is we buy it as we get it. And I don't think I'm a fan of the bond. I'm not sure what the initial bang for buck is over the cost of the bond versus paying for the projects as we collect the revenue.
Well, again, just looking at the list, we're 10 years out into 26, 27, 28, 29, 30 before any of these things ever get addressed. The thought process behind the bond is to get these things done a little bit sooner, as we're seeing right now, which I don't think will continue, but the high cost of putting these projects together is escalating every 60 days. Mm-hmm. And, you know, the immediate 18 months ahead of us don't look good.
Yes.
So things are going to get a lot more expensive.
So, okay, I'm tracking with what you're thinking. So if you go back to the other slide, so Aaron did go over the weighting of this, how he came up with this list. 2 councils ago, 2 meetings ago, I believe it was last meeting, workshop. So this is very much safety prioritized, schools, near schools, most of those are all near schools. Safety priority waiting on that's how that list came up in that order.
Schools give us the biggest chance for grants.
Oh, absolutely, absolutely. You know, like for example, that the first one, we already have a Safe Routes to School grant application in for. So that, I mean, that could easily come up with 1 point whatever on that, and that one comes right off the list.
So what am I missing on the Silver Hill? That's $1.7 million and
yeah, I would suggest to you.
Schools.
So no, you're near Stevens Creek. You've got the senior center up there. So there's I think there's a waiting for community space up there and is waiting. So I think that's why that Silver Hill comes in there.
So the walking path for that would be going from Lake Drive up Silver Hill to get over to Stevens Creek, or coming down Silver Hill to Lake Drive and then all the way down Lake Drive to get to Stevens Creek and then back up the hill.
It would primarily be going north from Eagle Ridge to the Silver Hill intersection. Figure you have the new Gen Care facility coming on board, the senior center, Stevens Creek Elementary, the other elementary that's in the vicinity, the early learning center. So you are going to get heavier traffic on that road for different populations. And then it would eventually then go south to Lake Drive to Lundy.
If I may speak up here, living on Silver Hill, I'm just going to say, okay, I'm on Silver Hill. I'm very familiar with this whole scenario and the idea of Eagle Ridge becoming a much bigger thing than what it is right now. I know we talked about that, Russ, and with Jill Meese as well, a while back. There's potential there. Once you develop what's up on 9, yes, there's going to be traffic. And yes, you're right about the poles that are all the way down Silver Hill. And what are we going to do about that? They haven't talked about different solutions in that regard. But I do think, if you think about it, Crosswater, across the street, will be able to get down to Lundeen Park straight on if we get a sidewalk on Silver Hill. And the idea of the road going down to Stevens Creek Elementary is just awesome as well. I just see great potential for utilizing the space we have without cutting more trees down. I would love to see the different ideas that they've talked about Eagle Ridge Park becoming. And plus we've got our community, I believe Councilmember Daughtry knows there's a community garden there as well. So I mean, there's just great potential. That's what I see. It's kind of waiting. That's all I have to say. And sidewalks, also, I know that, look at what the schools did about the bond. The Lake Stevens School District bond passed. It did. That doesn't always happen. What it means is that people in Lake Stevens support their schools. And a lot of these roads we're talking about here do go to schools. I think of 91st Avenue as a critical place for good sidewalks to all those schools that are on 91st.
So what we need to come out from tonight is council direction on those 5 areas so that we can place that into a resolution that we can look at a workshop on the 5th, because that resolution needs to be passed on the 12th so we can get this on the ballot.
So I thank you, Mayor, for that clarification. So first, I just want to Directors Halverson, Stevens, Wright for outstanding presentation, data information. It's been super helpful for me to be able to work through this. I'm fully in favor of bonding. I'm mayor almost always with you, pay as you go. But when I'm watching projects, especially washed out project and other projects, prices doubling sometimes within 12 months. We're paying 3%, current CPI is 9%. You know, there's no reason that we should not take advantage of the favorable, especially the municipal bonds that are at 0.7%. That's ridiculously low. Any opportunity we have to leverage our resources and provide better value for our citizens is a no-brainer to me. Likewise, Gary, your point, pushing out to 2032, I feel like it's like Sound Transit. You know, in 2040, you're going to have a rail station at Boeing. You know, you're like, okay. I think we can get out ahead of this. Our staff have done a great job of putting projects together and identifying needs based on safety. Last I remind the city, we had a fatality on 91st Street just last year. with a young child that was, you know, struck by a vehicle. So there was an imminent safety need. If you go by any of the schools, when they're letting out, there's tons of kids everywhere. So I'm fully on board with, I don't know where that balance is, and I don't know that we can appropriately articulate that to the people. How many people are going to read the voters pamphlet statement, pro and con? There's going to be a little statement there, and as they see the full statement, it's going to be a lot of social media presentation is what I would be my guess is how that information is going to be disseminated to people and how they're going to make that decision. But for me as a taxpayer, you know, if I can see that the money's being used to the best for the community, it's an easier thing for me to say yes to, like the school board does with their bonds. Say, hey, this is exactly what the money's going to. It makes it much easier for me to raise my taxes to support that.
In that voters pamphlet, I guess what I'm looking at this list here, and if we take the top, I don't know, the top 5 or 6 of these things, etch these in stone, and then in the voters pamphlet also mention that the balance of that money will be used not specifically for identified projects, because things do change, and make that caveat in that voters or in that or ordinance or whatever.
Yeah, Gary. So I think it's really easy for us to create a city website that says, look, these are the projects. And as we go through the projects, if we get extra money, we can get the next project. It's in that yellow, right? Is that what you're asking?
Yeah, or the maintenance situation.
Or the maintenance,
yeah,
right.
exactly. It's, and you know, depending on if we're able to get some funding for some of these other projects, then you're right. We could slide things around and so forth. But I guess identifying or quantifying a dollar amount that is in, as well as identifying and quantifying some other projects that make up that component.
So from the city standpoint, we can create a factual website that talks the facts. We can't campaign for it, right? So we can easily do the facts. Hey, this is the priority project list, and we'll knock them out as money's available. And then these are the priority overlay percentages that we want to get as roads come up that need to be fixed. We can totally create that website that gives that information.
So what is the information that you're needing to put on the ballot measure? The term of the bond, the amount, what it's used for, generally speaking. Mm-hmm. What else?
So
I mean, you're not going to be identifying specific projects in that ballot measure, right? It'll be on the city, reference to the city website.
Correct. Typically, you'd want to know more generic, so you have some flexibility.
Right. Yeah. Okay.
So we definitely need to know what percentage the council wants to go forward with. Is it the 0.2%? That's the first portion. You can go between 0.1%, 0.2%, or 0.3%.
My recollection, we talked a bit about this at the retreat, and I felt like we landed at 2%, that felt like enough to sort of tackle some of the bigger projects. It felt like a reasonable compromise versus, not getting enough to do really anything meaningful or kind of overextending, overtaxing. So I like the 2%, 0.2%, not 2%.
I would like to land somewhere that's consistent with all the communities around us, so we can say, we're doing exactly what the other cities have been doing. We're not above, we're not below. We're doing exactly what they are to make sure their roads are maintained as well. Mm-hmm. It seems like a very logical approach to
2/10 is what the other cities are doing.
So. Yeah, right. So that's where I would land.
Yeah. Okay, so we got 0.2%, and then are we in a consensus that we will use some portion of it for bonding?
I feel like as a taxpayer, if I'm gonna vote yes to raise my taxes, I want to see I'm going to see what that's going to get me. And I think, to Gary's point, Councilman Peter Sagan, to not be able to see that until 2032, I'm concerned about.
So you're saying maximize bond?
I would prefer to bond.
Yeah.
You're saying maximize bond?
Maximize it. There's no reason not to. I mean, 3%, 3.5%.
Right.
Those are ridiculous numbers. I mean, the money your return is ridiculous. I mean, we would be going backwards. We'd be losing money. It's like investing your money in a CD that's paying 2%.
Just a clarification though, on the standard bond debt that Director Stevens was talking about, it's more in that 3% range. It's the Public Works Trust Fund loans that are around that 1%.
Correct. And so so the 3% is still very good compared to what yes. If we could get those public works that are 0.7 or 1.5, that'd be better.
But now, can you use Public Works Trust funds for sidewalks? That's not on the list here.
Yes, it is.
No. So I see roads, streets, sanitary, sewer, water. Does that include
if it's new improved projects?
Then it's okay.
Right. Yeah, I think so.
Streets would.
That's what I wondered.
I think sidewalks are in on that. I think I've seen it before.
Okay.
I would like to clarify some expectations on what would actually be built. I appreciate the thought of widened shoulder and this and that. The problem with that is that it needs to be washed out standards in most cases to apply for these grants, which means vertical separation, so curb gutter to sidewalk essentially. We already have some problems with widened shoulders in the community where the parents are parking on them to drop their kids off at school. And so it is an option if we're funding our own projects, but just bear in mind, if we're going out for a grant, you typically have to be washing.
Yeah, that's good to know.
Mm-hmm. We would also like to clarify, Director Wright had mentioned the only listing that's in here, included in here, is sidewalk projects, but there's additional sections funded, sorry, wrong way. There's still funding going into the street and road projects. And so that would be, I think Main Street is the highest priority project in that. And then the trail pathway, there is still funding going in that. So I think, if I'm not mistaken, that one's South Lake Stevens and the trail. Power Line Trail in there as well. So the only thing that was listed in here was the sidewalks. So it's the main things. And then there is additional funding going towards those other things.
And I think part of the assumption on the use of these funds would be that it's also a matching fund. So the city would still be looking through whether it's our traffic impact fees, through REIT, through other grant funding, that this TBD, whether it's in a bond to kickstart some projects or a match to secure other funds. I think that's the way we've sort of looked at these funds, that they're additive, and that's sort of setting the first line of questions is, how much do you want to set aside for this? And then we can talk about sort of the percentiles going to other programs. So is there a hard dollar amount we'd want to set for bond debt for pavement preservation? And then what's left over would be allocated towards streets, sidewalks, and trails. And then what are those percentages? What do they look like? And do we bank that for matching funds? Or do we, to Councilmember Peter Shagan's point, look at our list and we giving you a list of 10 projects, and then with the funding available, that's sort of the X factor we talked about. Can we fund it? So can we go build this complete project? It might not be number one, but if we could build number 4 in its entirety, is that where we put our dollars and emphasis?
Question of clarification. The projects that are on this list that we were given, are these part of the CIP?
Yes.
Are they listed in prioritization?
In the new prioritization has happened before this year's CIP, but when this year's CIP comes out, it will look new and it will match this strategy for streets, roads, etc., sidewalks.
So when we're looking at this funding, that is strictly bond issue. We've got a number of items here that may or may not be paid through our CIP with transportation dollars or mitigation dollars or real estate excise tax.
Lots of money that we'll be drawing from.
Exactly. So this is this money that we're talking about, this bond issue, is extra money.
Mm-hmm. Right. And I think that list can be fluid. I think we have our major projects that we want to do,
but I think it can be fluid. We also need to look at different opportunities for types of sidewalks. If we have to grant or we get grants, we got to match that standard. But if we're not, maybe we're looking at something different. And Halverson, Director Halverson said, there's a chance to not have to do overlays on some of these, that we can get longer useful life with sealing them and stuff. So I think there's a lot of little things that go into this matrix in these projects. So I think we got to remain a little fluid with it still as well.
Well, I agree with you. I totally understand the fluidity. We have to be fluid because things change constantly. However, at the same time, you're trying to go out for a TPD and telling people this is projects we're going to do. Damn, we're about to do them.
Well, here's what I say. I say we go out for the bond, tell them what our ideas, and if they don't approve it, then we look at the way we do it next time. I mean, I want to put our best foot forward on this, but I think we have a list of projects. We know which streets, we know the condition of all the streets. We can say we've done a ton of research here. And I think that website that you keep bringing up, Brett, I think is where it's going to make our most traction.
Yeah, are those numbers up there, the ones that are highlighted, are they deducted from the 8.8 million?
The 8.8 million is inclusive of all of that. If we were to put the $500,000 aside for the pavement preservation or overlays, that would reduce these projects, the sidewalk portion of the projects, to 6.67 million, and those ones in yellow would drop off of the list.
Not drop off, but not be funded under this.
They'd be under that.
Yeah,
be funded under TPD.
But could get back on with other opportunities.
Right.
Absolutely. And everything.
Or with our increased sales tax.
Yep.
So what you're saying then, the proposal is we do the non-highlighted ones and 500,000 overlay or maintenance. And that would put us, and that would be what we're going to put on the list of what we're trying to sell the TPD for.
My recommendation is if we're going to put money aside every year for pavement preservations or overlays, we don't bond that money. There's no reason to bond that if we're going to do that on a regular basis. If we're going to do that every year, there's no reason to take a chunk up front and pay interest on it. So I would reduce your overall by that amount first. And then if you want to bond the rest of the funding, then bond the rest of it.
Well, now I get it. Okay, got it. I understand.
We don't want to pay interest on when we're having to do it annually.
Just putting money aside for a reason.
Yeah, and if you take it all as bond money and you hold on to it, then you have to pay interest issues and things. So we don't want to do that either.
Okay. Staff, you got enough guidance?
Let me look.
To build this resolution, because what I want to come back on the next workshop is a draft resolution so that we can get a stamp.
So we're thinking $500,000 for the overlays, put that aside for now.
Well, that's my vote.
And then bond. And then the bond, are we looking at a 10-year bond? So we don't have to go longer than that?
I don't want to go longer.
And I think that's all I need at this point. And I think we have an idea on the list that has been presented.
The TBD is 10 years, so the bond would match the TBD.
And the numbers that I got were estimating that we would get the bond in February. And so we could, if we do get a public works trust fund loan instead of that, then that's good. Then we can readjust our bond amount after the fact. So this way we don't actually have to put it into the ballot measure that you're bonding. You only have to do that if you're actually going to go beyond the 10 years. So they want to know that if you're going to go beyond 10 years. You could put it in there, but you don't have to.
Anything else for staff?
Is it possible to circulate a draft resolution or whatever before our meeting?
Yeah, we can put it in a packet for the workshop.
Okay, so we have time to think about it.
Soak it in. Yeah. Get outside of the deck.
So I don't want to beat a dead horse. However, I'm going to beat a dead
Yes,
horse.
you do. Yes.
So we're saying 0.2% when we can go to 0.3. I have experience with the 0.3% on community transit when we asked for a 0.3% increase through the PTBA. And the reason we went with the 0.3% instead of 0.2% was because you buy it off in one shot, you get it done, and you're not going back and asking again. I just want to put that out there on the table just as think about that.
I think the risk increases that you don't get anything.
We talked about that too. There is a risk, but it wasn't realized. So we got the 0.3. So I don't know, 0.2 is fine. not going to argue it. I just wanted to talk about something that I experienced in raising taxes on an entire TBA.
Yeah, I just think when people's gas prices are up last year, and their property tax is going up 33%. Next year, you know, I just looked at assessment that's $200,000 higher than the listing price for a home here in the city. And I'm like, so now we're going to get into thing where people are seeing that, they're like,
that's a good point.
So that's a concern. I totally agree. If we get the point 3, that we'd love to get those projects done sooner, but I agree with Angie, the risk is too great.
I think not right now. I think it's not the right time.
No, you're probably right. I just wanted to bring it up.
Appreciate it.
Fair enough.
Move to adjourn.
Second.
I got a motion to adjourn. All those in favor?
Aye.
All right, we are adjourning. Appreciate everyone's work. Good discussion tonight, and make sure you go out.
Thanks, Mark.